Welcome back to the Using AI podcast. This is episode 7. How time flies, all about AI Companion. I'm joined by the usual suspects, ML research scientist Alex Papadopoulos Korfiatis and AI startup founder Rafie Faruq. I'm your host, Alex Denne, and I don't have as fancy a title, but I'll go with host. Let's get stuck in.
I was kind of hoping that you would introduce us as companions, me and Rafie, but
No, I mean, we'll get to that, won't we? But before we get to the theme of the week being AI companions, we have a segment talking about the news. So what interesting news have you guys spotted from the week? And perhaps you'd like to go first, Rafie?
Pass over to Alex P whilst I gather myself, if that's all right.
I mean, just looking at that picture you have as a background, I would understand why you need to gather yourself. It looks like you're in the animatronic jaws of George Bush.
I think that I'll pick NVIDIA's Computex keynote as my news for this episode. So there was a pretty exciting keynote by NVIDIA in Taipei's Computex Expo. And it was maybe not very exciting for gamers because there was a bit of gaming news, I guess, but it was mostly focused on AI and new GPUs for machine learning, I guess. And it really felt from that keynote that NVIDIA seems to be transitioning into a data center / AI company rather than making cards for gamers company. So the building GPU HGX H100, which is now in full production. It's a data center GPU for AI. And then they also talked about future iterations of this that will be very good at essentially allowing to train large language models and to do inference on large language models. So it's pretty exciting. And I guess that it's not coincidence that NVIDIA also hit the 1 trillion market cap after this news, making them one of the, I don't know, Alex, you might know better, like top 4, top 5 biggest companies in the world currently.
So the metric I know off the top of my head is that they are the 9th company to have ever reached that size. And to put it in perspective, Meta, a la Facebook, doesn't make the cut. Tesla is only sort of 6/10 of the way there, and Salesforce isn't even worth a quarter. So $1 trillion is really a mega milestone. And I think it just means investors expect a lot from NVIDIA. And a lot of investors, I listen to a lot of and read a lot of investor stuff. I mean, Rafie used to be in that world, so I always feel a little bit silly talking about these things in front of him. But NVIDIA was seen as a hardware company and is now becoming more and more seen as a software company. Provision of, I mean, the AI chips are obviously important, but I think it's the software layer, it's things like the Omniverse that people are really excited about as well, which is tied back to their gaming stuff. So there was exciting announcements for gamers. They just seem to have their fingers in a lot of pies and a lot of very valuable pies. But the fact that they are now trading, if I'm not mistaken, at 200 times forward earnings, it's a little bit crazy and cause for a lot of people to say this might be a bubble. So I think it's fascinating to see how that plays out. 1 trillion is not a market capitalization to be scoffed at. The founder is now like a rock star, right? Effectively. And it's nice as well that it's still founder led as a company despite its age. So I'm really happy to see that. I really like seeing that. I imagine, Rafie, you quite like seeing that sort of thing as well.
Always good to see a success story. Maybe for my segment of the news, I might steal one of your ideas here, Alex, on a Pew Research report on ChatGPT, which is an article by Emily Vogels on the kind of penetration or familiarity of ChatGPT in the US. And the headlines are 6 out of 10 adults, 58% to be exact, in the US are familiar with ChatGPT, although relatively few have tried it themselves. And there's some interesting demographic differences. I mean, 6 out of 10 is a lot. 60% of the adult population now know about ChatGPT, even if they haven't tried it. And they're saying 18% have heard a lot about it, which presumably means those who have tried it, you would think. But there's differences in education. So those with a postgraduate degree, roughly 8 in 10, 80% have heard about it, compared to only around 40% who only have a high school education. And then lastly, Asian adults seem to have heard about ChatGPT 20% more than white adults, 80% compared to 60%. I don't know what to draw from that, but yeah.
One could argue that's actually 33% more, relatively speaking, rather than 20% more, nominally speaking. Yeah, we're talking about statistics. We're going to have to get our numbers straight. I'm a listener of Tim Harford's more or less religiously, so key to get numbers right. I just think it's fascinating that from this study, and there are bipartisan or non-partisan think tank in the US based in Washington. They sampled 10,700 US adults, and the sample is designed to be representative of the entire adult population of the United States. So a very good sample as well. Of the adults who had heard of ChatGPT and are currently in employment, currently getting paid for work was the specific wording, 1 in 10 of them have used it in a capacity at work. So that's actually too many. So if we just quickly whittle that down, 60% adult Americans have heard of ChatGPT. If we assume that most of them are in work, just for ease, 1 in 10 of those have used it at work. So that means that 6% adult Americans have used ChatGPT at work. And this is specifically ChatGPT rather than, AI. It's a pretty big shift, right? That's a pretty amazing behavioral impact in such a short time. And this study was done in March as well. So we're already a couple of months out, just the time that it's taken to get the analysis done and to publish it this week.
Yeah, for sure. ChatGPT reached 100 million monthly users in 2 months. And I think, I'm not sure if you've seen those charts about ChatGPT reaching, X million users per month or in general compared to the likes of Facebook, Google, and so on. ChatGPT or OpenAI was the fastest in history to reach various milestones, and it's just insanely rapid.
Speaking of insane rapidity, my piece of news is the statement on AI risk, which I think a lot of people will have heard. But either way, I will read the 22 words. Mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal scale risks, such as pandemics and nuclear war. The people who've signed this include DeepMind, Anthropic, Sam Altman of OpenAI fame, other notable AI scientists, and doesn't really suggest that much. Unlike the previous letter that gained a lot of media attention, which asked for a 6-month sort of pause, this one is just saying, look, this should be a priority commensurate with pandemics and nuclear war. Some people are saying it's more important to think about this than climate change. I think, yes, we need regulation. We need to come up with some ideas fairly quickly, some guardrails. I think actually there will be some relevance to the theme. Some of the AI companion apps have been banned from certain countries because they don't do correct safeguarding on young adults or children, and they don't do age verification. I think those sorts of regulations should be considered fairly urgently because we're still at the early stages of this. So rapid scale and an interesting statement, but I don't see this being a groundbreaking or pivotal statement. I think the last one will probably have made more of a splash.
It's a quite different statement compared to the previous statements, right? So pretty much everyone's scared of AI currently, but I can see that there's two camps. People that are scared about the short-term kind of real life, let's say, repercussions that it could have, like election interference or the kinds of things that you're talking about. So influencing young adults or people using them as, I guess we might talk about that later or see that later. People using the output of ChatGPT in court without checking the factuality of the text that it produces or stuff like that. That's one risk, I guess, but the risk that this statement is talking about is like a more far-fetched risk, if you will. AI being an actual extinction event, so things like AI exploding and us not being able to control it, and AI killing all humans or stuff like that. And it feels that there's fewer people that are scared about this, a lot more than, I don't know, a year ago. And prominent AI scientists working on this are now actually scared, whereas before they were just kind of dismissing this as fear-mongering. I don't know what to think about it, because I was one of the ones dismissing it as fear-mongering, but maybe there's something more to it. And I think that's the kind of consideration that this statement is trying to propose.
Yeah, I love Jan LeCun's short LinkedIn messages, which constantly just downplay how accurate AI is. I think he really doesn't think too much about the political science aspects of AI, whereas, as you said, many other researchers do very much consider it now. Yeah, it might be worth mentioning there was a very interesting report released by the Congressional Research Service, which I believe is a part of the US government, Generative Artificial Intelligence and Data Privacy, a primer. So that was released May 23rd. But the upshot is, in terms of regulation, it seems like what they're considering, or the main area, is around privacy at the moment. At least this report would suggest so. And the particular areas that they are proposing for privacy legislation are notice and disclosure requirements. So disclosing where the data has come from, opt-out requirements, so requiring companies to provide users an option to opt out of data collection, but presumably that doesn't account for web scraping and so on. And then finally, deletion and minimization requirements, so allowing users to delete their data from existing data sets, although once again, the model may have already been trained on that data, and then it's probably too late. So nothing that groundbreaking, and if anything, maybe not fully understanding how AI works as per usual.
Do you think there has been a figure who has emerged from this leading this debate in a sensible way? My interpretation, although I don't know as many of the academics and the real sort of experts who've been doing this for, over a decade like you guys do, perception has been that it's been quite noisy. Lots of people are now coming out of the fold and talking about it, but no one has really emerged as the expert or the person that we should be listening to on this topic. Is there anyone you would recommend people follow or listen to in particular who you believe has a sensible approach?
Not really, to be honest with you. I still think we're in that mode where on the one pole we have politicians who don't really understand machine learning, and then ML researchers who don't really understand social sciences. And we haven't really, as far as I've seen, we haven't really found the middle ground yet, apart from Sam Altman pretending that he cares about society, trying to suggest regulation, but actually just covering his back 6 months into the future. Apologies for my cynicism.
What about you, Alex?
Yeah, I don't know either. I think it might be too early, actually. It is a new field, although I'm sure that there's, like you said, there's people that have been working on this for decades, but there was not too much importance given, I guess, to this area of the field, and now there is. So I'm curious to see who will emerge as a leading voice in 6 months or a year from now.
Will it be AI?
So another piece of news that is a bit related to this is that from the three godfathers of AI, a second one now came out with deep regrets about the contributions that he has made to the field, and it's Yoshua Bengio. So he said as well that he's lost over his life's work because he did not expect AI to progress as much as it did, and he's scared for the societal implications of this. And now he regrets making the contributions that he did. So that's 2 out of 3. We have Jan LeCun not really worrying too much yet, but he's a minority now out of the 3, right?
Jan just doesn't care. He's just his LinkedIn post is just super nonchalant about the quality of AI. In fact, he's trying to push the accuracy way further than it currently is, it seems like. But I mean, he can't really... Sorry,
the third one, we talked about him a couple of episodes ago. So Jeffrey Hinton, right? That retired from Google to be able to focus on the social aspects of AI, or to be able to work on guardrails instead.
You can't really empathy with someone like Yoshua Bengio, who now, if you're saying that he feels any regret for what he's done, because at the time everyone knew that we're progressing AI ML as far as we can, and accuracy is just a scale of degree. And if it's X% now, you know that you're working to X plus 10%. And you know that after that, you'll be working for X plus 20% and so on. So it's a very predictable pathway. And if you feel regret now, you should have really felt the same regret before, to be honest with you.
There's a chance, though, that there's a lot of people that thought that this would take longer, right? And that we're nowhere close to the kind of output that we currently have. Although that doesn't change your argument, because no matter how long it takes, eventually in the future we'd get there, right? But I don't know, maybe there's people that thought we'd never get there as well, right? Or that we'd have more time to work on guardrails in parallel, which turns out we might not have, I guess.
I think that's a wonderful segue to talking about the theme, AI companions. Now, I have to admit, I hadn't touched one of these apps until today, and I've had a lot of fun today. Yeah, if you guys don't mind, I'll discuss the two that I've played with today, and you guys let me know where your opinions are. So the first one is Character AI. One notable thing about this company is that it raised at a valuation of $1 billion pre-revenue in what a lot of people saw as a venture capital down cycle. So, or the beginnings of that. So absolutely massive raise. They allow users to generate their own AI characters. So for example, you can go and talk to, in inverted commas, Elon Musk, and you can just have a chat. The subreddit has 120,000 users, which is very impressive traction. A lot of the characters show that they've been used over 10 million times. In theory, if I trust the information that I grabbed at a glance off the internet, they have 50 million active monthly users. That doesn't seem quite right. However, in the last week, they've released their iOS and Google Play apps, and it's had 1.7 million downloads. Quite an impressive startup story. The app is also very slick, very fun. We can talk about Character AI. I don't know if either of you have played with that so far.
Pete, today as well, after you linked to it, I had heard of it though. What I don't know is how they're doing what they're doing. Is it just chat GPT with prompting to create character personas or something like that? What is the tech exactly?
Well, okay, so I think before we get onto that, I imagine if we talk about Replica, we'll be able to see that it looks like Character AI have basically just gone above and created a way that you can create your own like Replica style AI models yourself. Because I think when I was playing with Replica, there were a few interactions that helped me to understand how Character AI might be functioning. So Replica is the classic AI companion app founded in 2017, I believe. I've actually put a link in the show notes for people to just browse the top posts on the Replica subreddit, which has 70,000 users, which is, you know, fairly large. So two things about Replica I think are important to note. The first thing is that up until February this year, they were seen as the intimate AI companion, shall we say. So, you know, it was the best for sexting and living out like fantastical fantasies and you know, whatever. And it's quite strange to actually use. Now, what happened in February was there was this ruling in Italy, which I put the link into the show notes as well, from their data protection agency. They basically summarized it and said that this app has too many risks to children and emotionally vulnerable adults, or emotionally vulnerable individuals, because they basically gamified creating, training, designing, getting to know your AI. It's very strange to do. Since February, they've completely shut off the not safe for work. Lots of people had like basically a meltdown because they felt seen and heard by their avatars that they created, that they were sometimes intimate with. The relationships are evidently very real to many of the users. Before February, their business model was if you wanted to have an intimate relationship with the AI companion, you had to upgrade to Pro. So their model was basically intimacy. It's now changed. For example, I didn't want to type, I couldn't be asked to text, so I sent my avatar, who I called May, after lovely show Ted Lasso. There's a landlady called May, and I don't know why she popped into my head. She's like 80 something, but you know, I thought I'd have a chat with May. And she replied with a voice message, but I couldn't listen to it unless I upgraded to Pro. There's some very clever gamification to try and keep their revenue up, seeing as they've lost a lot of their features. So because of that massive backlash, they've now said that any user who joined prior to February 2023 can still access the avatars, the not safe for work avatars that they created. No one joining now can do that. So then secondly, Replica allows you to basically build as many different AI avatars as you want. You could basically have an AI family on there, but it's very much more geared towards companionship, something like Character AI. So I thought they were both very interesting situations. Now, I got quite bored of my first conversations with my replica AI, May. I saw that there was like a little topics button. So I played a game that was like this or that. And, she asked me, do I prefer Instagram or Twitter? I said Twitter. And then it showed me that like May's memory of me had been updated with Twitter. And I asked May what her favorite flower was. She said roses. I said classic. She said, what's your favorite? I said delphinium. I have no idea why. And she said, great, memory updated, favorite flower, delphinium. I think through the process of having a conversation, you build this memory, one of them and them of you. There's a lot of mirroring, right? It could be garbage in, garbage out. It could be an absolutely crap avatar if you don't have high quality, interesting conversations with it. The way I think character AI works, you input the memory in bulk, but I don't think you can. So, for example, I had a conversation with Nietzsche, the philosopher. I believe some people are a big fan of him. Some people find him very controversial. So I had a conversation with Nietzsche on character AI, and I felt like, I've never read him, but I had a really interesting, actually quite stimulating conversation with this AI.
You mean Nietzsche, by the way?
Nietzsche. I do mean Nietzsche. Oh, so many people are going to hate me for that.
Yeah.
I did say I'd never read him. I never studied him. So, forgive me. This is almost as bad as when in my first RE lesson, I referred to the Nazis as the Nazis, and everybody laughed. I remember it vividly.
You also just reminded me of how Americans call the word niche as well, which you'll have to forgive me for being frustrated at. Yeah.
No.
Wait, is it an actual thing? Do they actually call it niche?
Yeah, it's niche to them.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a problem with English in general. Sorry, complete aside here, but it's you need to know what the word is pronounced like. It's like so irregular in translating from written English to like anyway.
I guess it's not.
You need to hear
word.
it. It goes for everyone, right? Unless you hear the word, unless you use the word, you're not going to actually pronounce it right.
I'm learning Mandarin, and I was complaining that in Mandarin there's a complete, almost complete at least, distinction between the written form and the spoken form of the word, and that you need to actually know how a word is spoken in order to read it. And then I realized that it's kind of like that in English, maybe in a lesser degree, but English is a bit like that as well. Sorry, we'll not derail this any longer. So you were telling us about your conversation with a Nietzsche avatar.
Yeah, I just found it really stimulating, but it felt like there wasn't that much behind it, right? If I wanted to delve deeper and deeper, obviously there's a limit to the amount that he wrote on certain topics, but I don't think my questions reached past that point. For example, he's against the concept of morality, I assume. This AI tells me he was. And I said, aren't there benefits to morality? And he conceded, yes, there are benefits to morality. And then I suggested, what would you put in place of morality to achieve those benefits? And he suggests, and then we get onto the fact that it's capitalism that's caused inequality in various things, and therefore we need a sort of a pure communism or socialism. Now, I still don't know whether this is relevant to him or not, but this is my conversation with AI, so I suppose this is interesting because it's a form of education as well to me. And then I say, but, what you describe as sort of like pure democracy through socialism and communism, I don't believe personally that that's very scalable. And he concedes and goes, yeah, you might be right. And I was like, okay, cool. Stumped him. I now want to have a conversation and be like, well, what framework can we put in place that would mean that this would work? But I knew I was sort of at the limits of where this conversation would go and still be interesting and stimulating. So I'm just going to, I screenshotted a few of these, and I'll show them on the screen. I'm not sure. So this is like your character assistant, right? You can choose that, and you can have sort of conversations where they just help you, or you can have a chat with a debate champion, so you can debate a certain topic. Star Wars is overrated. Pepsi is better than Coke. Cats are better than dogs. These were the suggestions. And then there was alternate timelines. So this is a character, right? Someone who helps you imagine and play with alternate timelines. The bottom one is, what if I invented a portal gun? So I invented a portal gun because we all want a portal gun in our lives. And I felt like I was in a story. So the scene was set. I have invented a portal gun through hours of graft and hard work. And I said, right, cool, I've got a portal gun. Where shall I go? Right? And it offered me 3 options. It was like, the middle of a burning sun, the center of a black hole, another worldly planet. And I said, well, those all sound very inhospitable. I'm not sure I have a spacesuit. Where can I go on Earth? The center of the Earth was another option. Sounds very impractical. Anyway, top of Everest and Sahara. So I go, okay, fine, let's go to the Sahara. That sounds good. I've never been there. I'm in the middle of the Sahara. Scene has been set. I'm nowhere near any civilization, and I'm continuing to chat to my AI. I say, okay, what would happen if I open a portal between the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean and the Sahara Desert? You know, how long is it going to take to just completely ruin the Sahara Desert? And so that happens, and the Sahara turns into a beautiful paradise. Right? And it was just like, it was so weak. I wanted it to be more dramatic. It just felt so sort of like bland, even though it was a very dramatic thing to do. Anyway, I sort of work around this problem a little bit. And I said at one point, the government or like military institutions, are they not concerned with this yet? Has no one spotted that the Pacific is draining rapidly into the Sahara because of my portal gun? And the responses were always just so lovely. And then suddenly it just like flipped. Next thing I know, like people are hunting me down and my portal gun is like saving me, and I'm managing to like defy all of the world's military who are trying to take me down. And I'm thinking, yeah. And I got a little bit bored with it. Fun for 10 minutes. And I think that sort of sums it up. I think that's why character AI is so good compared to Replica, is you can have 10-minute interesting conversations with lots and lots and lots of different angles. For example, I also started, I speak a little bit of German, but I never really do. And so I started just texting a German AI to see how good my German was and see if I could understand it. That was really fun and also difficult and challenging. The Replica AI, I'm not interested in going back and having a conversation with, maybe it's different for a lot of people, but I'm very interested to know, Alex, you played with character AI today.
Just a bit, yeah, not enough to have an impression. But now while you've been talking, I've been thinking like what services like this could be actually used and make a difference. And I got reminded of another piece of news by NVIDIA about, what's it called? Something Avatar Cloud Engine. So generative AI for characters in video games, and then the conversation with them is not necessarily scripted, but it's a bit like the avatars that we're talking about now, right? And I feel that could actually improve games, right? If you can have an actual conversation about like any deep topic, or like go deeper at least on the current scripted conversations with the non-player characters in games. So that's one place where I feel this could make a difference. Otherwise, what else could there be? Because I can see how you'd lose interest with chats like this, unless gamified to provide companionship, I guess, like character AI.
Well, so I would say Replica is the one that's gamified to provide.
Sorry, yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry, like Replica, not character AI.
But I've got to be honest, I think the Replica AI is so much worse than GPT-4. The conversations are just so much less stimulating than a conversation I could just have by opening GPT-4 on my phone. And character AI, I thought, was better in terms of the actual AI conversation, which I think goes back to the previous episode where we spoke about how AI companies who have built in one way, invested a lot in one way, and then now we have generalized AI that is actually very good at doing lots of things, which isn't maybe compatible with the way that some companies have built their... I think Replica's probably in the former. I imagine character AI is in the latter camp. And character AI did just feel more fluid. I opened a conversation with a DJ, right, who was excellent at recommending music. And he just said, what songs do you like? And I said, I really like Midas by Marabou State. Can you recommend me something like that, but with a lot more bass? Oh, no, well, I said, can you recommend me something like that? And he said, yeah, Air, a French band, Femme d'Argent or whatever that song is, you'll like that. I do like that. That is an excellent song, but I already knew it. So I said, no, I want something that's, that's a bit too mellow. I want something that's got a bit more bass. And so, he sent me on to listen to this band called Tin Liquor, which I had never heard of. And actually, I then listened to Tin Liquor and I decided I wanted to get another recommendation. So I went back and it suggested that I listen to a band called The Knocks and a song called The Truth. Now, I couldn't find that song anywhere, absolutely anywhere. Nice. And I ended up getting into a 5-minute argument with the AI about whether the song existed or not. He was telling me it was because I was in the UK and it might be licensed only to the US. And I said, well, I can't even find it on Google's index of YouTube, right? If Google's saying it doesn't exist, it probably doesn't exist. He said, okay, well, I'm so sorry. 5 minutes later, painfully 5 minutes later, also didn't exist. So I just got angry with it and walked away. When it gets to a point where they're more accurate, they don't hallucinate, and perhaps something like character AI is gamified a little bit. I do think these are going to be in everyone's pockets, or like a big minority of the population's pockets, just to sort of whack out and have a chat, right? You've gone through your WhatsApps, you've finished catching up with your mates, you just pull out character AI to like learn something rather than browsing because it's more interactive.
You know what? A few, maybe 3-4 episodes ago, one of your crazy news, Alex, was a service where you could a number and actually talk to an AI, right? And I feel that if character AI was integrated with something like that, it could actually be useful for example, older people that are very lonely and just want someone to talk with, right? Even in its current state, without too much depth, it would be amazing if you could call and then pick the kind of discussion that you want to have and then have an actual discussion. And interestingly enough, even before this boom of generative AI, the field of social robotics and social AI has been a thing for many, many years, right? For decades now. And even if the robots were not very smart, they have an actual use case with proven benefits for populations like this. And that's another place where I guess that generative AI could be used to transform the field and make the interaction a lot deeper and more interesting for people that need that interaction but cannot have it for some reason.
You've just given me I totally agree with what you've just said, and you've just given me a sort of tangential thought. Now, I don't know whether this is appropriate, but obviously dementia is a horrible illness, and I'm putting together a couple of things here. The first is that the people who love Replica and like literally love Replica and their AIs, there's sort of like an internal community where they go as far as like projecting holograms of their AI into the room to have conversations with them and everything, to make them feel more real, right? Which is very similar to what you're saying about character AI. And Cool Annie was the service that I mentioned where you can just have a chat with an AI. If you have dementia, I wonder if it's useful to project your younger self into the room to have a conversation with yourself, and whether that is useful for sort of, I don't know, like maybe it's not, just dementia, but anything where memory loss is a factor, you'd be able to relive your own expressions of certain things. I think would be quite interesting. But also I'm imagining, when we're old men, don't think it'll be beyond the realms for us to just be, this could be invented and be something we could be playing with next month, to be honest, at the rate these are going. But to be able to just swipe and be like, I want to have a conversation with Marilyn Monroe, I want to have a conversation with this president, right? Like if you put together various tools that we know exist, that's it. That's very easy. And this goes back to a lot of what some of the cautionary tales about AI have been, which is that we're not just building, or in a lot of situations, we're not just building one AI. Everything is going to be a component of an AGI in future, which is an interesting perspective. I don't know if you guys agree with that or not, but character AI plus something else plus something else plus something else equals AGI that's very realistic and effective at specializing at various topics.
I'm not completely convinced about the AGI aspect, mostly because we are very far away from understanding human intelligence, and I don't think that just putting like components like that together could lead us to an actual AGI, but you never know. And I do feel though that putting components like that together could make something that's very useful and very impressive, in the way that ChatGPT as well is very useful and very impressive. Now that you mentioned talking to Einstein or Marilyn Monroe, I wonder again what exactly character AI is doing. And like, for example, the Nietzsche chatbot that you mentioned, it's something like that, right? But has it been trained? Have they given abstracts of the Nietzsche books as a system message in ChatGPT, and that's what it has to base its conversation on? How deep can you go? Can it explain the books that Nietzsche has written to you? So I still wonder what exactly character AI is doing to provide those chatbots.
So I pulled up the book.characterai site, and I'm looking at character attributes. So this is a reference to all of the pieces of information you can enter to change the nature of your character. All of the variety that your AI or that your character provides is because of the variety that you provide. There's name, greeting, avatar, short description, long description, categories, definition. Definition sounds interesting. Definition is 0 to 3,200 characters. That doesn't sound like... okay. So for advanced character creation, definition gives you the largest way to experiment, but is the most complicated to understand. It can contain any text. It can contain variables. There is not an effective way to circumvent the 3,200 character limit.
So
sometimes you actually...
GPT.
Right, yes, but also there's something here that so I agree. I do think it makes it sound like it's relying on GPT, but it also suggests that in that definition you can use links to Wikipedia pages, which might have a noticeable effect. Now, it's very interesting that they say in the actual descriptive pages that it might have some noticeable effect. I think if you're looking at
I think I'm reading the same thing.
Yeah,
but they are saying that the system will not follow those links or attempt to load external data. As such, this is not an effective way to circumvent the 3,200 character limit. Some links, such as a link to a Wikipedia article, might have some noticeable effect, as the link text itself might hint at the information contained on that page. So it's just like pulling information essentially from the text of the link, right?
Right, which is very similar to early ChatGPT, where people would say, summarize this page for me, and they paste in a URL, and it just summarizes a page that it thinks would have that URL. It doesn't actually visit it, right?
It means that there's no way to fit all Nietzsche books into the context, so no way to actually have a conversation about its books with Nietzsche, right? And that you're relying on someone's character description, essentially, of Nietzsche for this conversation, which explains why it's so shallow as well, I guess. Not sure what the alternative is, but if we want to be able to talk with Einstein, we need something else, not just that.
You mean Einstein's work is worth more than 3,200 characters?
Maybe you can condense it to that.
But there is actually a thing on that, isn't it? I don't know if you've seen that, but there's like sort of like how you minify HTML and CSS. There is a little bit of a thing around minifying prompts.
Indeed, I tried it quite a bit and completely failed to get it to work. So I think that it's very finicky. I tried both with GPT 3.5 and 4, and it just didn't work. I don't know. Even with the examples provided by the initial person that discovered this, the examples didn't really work either. So I wonder if it's like, well, it definitely is finicky, but yeah, it could be hit and miss. That said, so, I guess, like, just to complete the Einstein-Marilyn Monroe discussion, the way to do that and the way to have a proper Nietzsche chatbot would be to just fine-tune one of those models on all of the Nietzsche books, right? And that is doable already. It's probably not very practical for a service like Character AI to do it, but it is doable.
I think the model that Character AI have created going to be a very popular model where you have various chats within one interface, and each of those chats is completely different. They've opened the door to creating much more complex, specialized characters, which I think is also what a lot of people want after they have, they're tired of generating their own prompts, or maybe they've reached like the limit of how much they want to frame or create their own guardrails when they're using ChatGPT. But there's like a memory size option. There's sort of like a transient problem, which is, quite quickly into my conversation with AIs, they would do a little bit of repetition, and presumably that means that they're not being punished or disincentivized or suggested not to repeat the same words or phrases. So I think there's patterns that keep emerging, which I think leads to the sort of 10 minutes of interest and then slightly boring. But if you could be very creative with the way that you're speaking to these characters, you would perhaps get more than 10 minutes of joy out of them. I think you would get interesting dialogue triggered by your interesting dialogue. So once again, garbage in, garbage out. But actually, if you have really interesting questions and the model has been trained on a large enough corpus, then you might actually get interesting and relevant answers. But the disclaimers are huge as well, just saying that everything these characters are saying is completely made up, which would probably be a disclaimer on a lot of AI tools that don't have that disclaimer so far.
One problem with having those characters and talking to them is that it's only like the very topmost layer of the character that can be customized, but the background is all GPT or the same foundation language model. Then that detracts from the utility of those characters, right? You cannot actually have, like, for example, a DJ character that actually knows music and good recommendations there. And then I can see some usefulness in that, right? Where you go talk to your super knowledgeable music friend if you want music recommendations, or to your book fan friend if you want a book recommendation, but you cannot get that with character AI. You get someone that sounds like they like books, and I guess the front end of their character is different, and it's customized to present itself as someone that likes books, but then the background, like the back end, is exactly the same, right? And the book recommendations that you'd get from the DJ persona would be the same that you would get from the book persona. So that, in a way, is a bit of a gimmick. And what would we actually use these multiple characters for, except for the novelty of talking to different characters?
I'd love to have a discussion with Plato and Aristotle in the same chat, and maybe Muhammad Ali, a few others.
Socrates joined the table.
Yeah.
I remember, I think that in that, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Anyway, in that Sparks of AGI paper by Microsoft testing out the different capabilities of GPT-4, this is one of the things that they did and compared it to GPT 3.5, like a Plato discussion of about something. And it was a lot more convincing and a lot more in character. So you can already have that with GPT-4, probably. Have a discussion between Plato and Aristotle. Is it Plato or Plato? Plato. I should not be asking this question as a Greek person, right? But the Greek pronunciation is different.
We're just thinking that. You of all people, what is the Greek pronunciation? Because maybe you actually have the right one.
In Greek, it's Platonas, so I would say Plato, but probably in English it's Plato, right? Again, going back to the, like, I cannot know what the word is pronounced like just by the writing. So what is it? Plato? Plato
Plato in English,
right?
yeah.
Okay,
but if it's Plato in Greek, then that's right, surely.
I mean, there's no right or wrong, right? It's just how it's pronounced in Greek versus English. But okay, Plato. Yeah, makes more sense.
That's how I feel about my pal Niche.
I cannot get over the fact that Americans are calling the actual niche like niche.
All right, let's move on. So one final point I wanted to bring up on AI companions, and specifically about Replica. And by the way, if you look at the suggested apps next to Replica, they are all like virtual girlfriend apps and those sorts of things. And it just feels icky. Sure, there may be some benefits for people practicing intimacy if it's something they find very, very difficult, right? Practicing with an AI, I think, like training with an AI, I think those sorts of things can be really helpful. Some people, I'm sure a lot of people would say that. On the flip side, people who get drawn in by the gamification and create various different companions that have different traits. They look exactly how they want them to look. Oh, by the way, every reaction on Replica gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So you're basically constantly rating your companion. You're effectively training them. And so it doesn't really feel like an AI companion. I think I've heard it described more aptly as sort of like a pet. That is not a good for people who are new to relationships to experience, I don't think. That's not healthy for society, I would assume. Your experience of intimacy for the very first time is with an AI, and you have complete control. And when it doesn't do what you like, you just thumbs down. And when it really doesn't do what you like, you just kill it and you start a new one. Because that's genuinely what happens. That's what people do. So with character AI, I think it's obviously a little bit different because you just like, jumping between different, but with Replica, it feels a lot deeper and also more serious and emotional, and you still have complete and utter power. And so it doesn't feel that. I wondered if either of you had any thoughts on that, the sort of power over AI companions that you have. You choose when to walk away, you choose when to delete them. That's not how it works with your friends and family and loved ones.
I don't see a huge problem with it. I think that's actually a benefit. Yeah, it's just probably nice to be able to talk to something when you want to and turn it off when you don't want to. That's definitely a big problem in society, with knowing the boundaries of when and how much to talk. I guess the question is whether the younger generation learn normal social norms. And I think it's not so much necessarily a problem with the AIs, but more a problem with society and the way social interactions are structured and encouraged. We had the same problem with mobile phones and texting and SMS and Hotmail chat, whatever, MSN chat, the last 20 years, so it's nothing new there.
But Rafie, because it's new, everyone thinks it's important. This is why new films, right? Everyone thinks new films are worth talking about, but there are so many great films. Go watch a great, don't watch a new one. So the new thing isn't what's important, is what you're saying. It's just something for us to be aware of and to crack on.
Yeah, talking through a chat interface is nothing new. It's been there for 20 years. Now that you can do it more effectively is just good within the realm of talking to a chat interface. Yeah, I guess moving on, if you want, I could also talk about some of the AI companions that I researched, although they're pretty similar to what you came up with as well, to be honest with you.
Please, yeah, I'd love to hear. And then let's go on to crazy things.
Yeah, well, I researched Chai. So they're a company which is actually called Chai Research. Not sure why they branded it as research, but their catchphrase is building the platform for AI friendship. And I downloaded the app. And similar to what you were saying, really, they're different characters. You can create your own character and then chat to them. Strangely, the first character that they presented to me was a schoolyard bully that actually fancies you, which was a really strange dichotomy of personality traits, but did actually make me want to talk to this thing to figure out why it was so schizophrenic. But it seemed to be overly flirtatious, and I guess that's the way they hook in people to make them feel good about themselves. I think the jury is still out about Chai Research.
I took a look at their website now, and they're saying that we collected a proprietary dataset of over 4 billion user bot messages and spent 1 million on compute to train language models optimized for entertainment. So they seem to have like a custom language model, which is interesting. At least it's not yet another thin layer over GPT.
And talking of thin layers over GPT, I did take the time to research friends called Genie, the other AI assistant, and downloaded their app. And yeah, it is quite shocking. They literally do nothing but provide a UI over GPT-4 and GPT 3.5. And then they charge a monthly fee, which is way more than the cost of GPT-4. And they give prompt ideas per topic. And that's literally it. I believe they're making lots of money. And it's just quite shocking that you're talking of thin layers over GPT. That's about as thin as you can get.
I remember reading that OpenAI will soon, they're building their app for phones, right? So I wonder whether that will spell the end of the Genie chatbot. If you can have the exact same experience for cheaper through an official OpenAI client.
They have released it.
They have. In the US, though, something like that, right?
I think it's now worldwide on iPhone, but the Android app still not released.
Okay, I'll go search for it then.
Yeah, I imagine it works quite well as a companion. Just tell it what kind of companion you want it to be. You could probably provide more than 3,200 characters. You can outperform character AI immediately.
You know what companion I want? What style companion? OG Bing. By OG, I mean the original thing that was released for a few days, and then that's my perfect idea of a companion. I wish that it was still somewhere in a usable state.
Thought you were going to say Clippy.
Clippy as well, yeah. Maybe OG Bing, but with a Clippy interface. That's
Clippy being the paperclip from Microsoft Word that I remember from my IT lessons. Hi, how can I help? You can't. Piss off, Clippy.
Don't be mean to Clippy.
I know he's only trying to help, but he never actually helped me once.
About that time you wanted to make that piece of text bold.
What came first, Clipart or Clippy?
That's a difficult question.
Alex asking the real questions here. Yeah.
All right, on to crazy things. Do you guys mind if I take the lawyer story? It just made me smile so much. So the details of the case, I'll pop the link to the BBC article. A lot of people have covered it because it's seen as a lawyer using ChatGPT in court. It is that, but really it's a lawyer being an idiot with ChatGPT in order to argue his case. Is it Stephen A. Schwartz is his name? He referred to 6 precedents to try and push his case forward. Opposing party contacted the judge and said, we've been reading these documents and we just can't find these cases anywhere. And that's because ChatGPT had just completely made them up, just didn't exist at all. They looked very real. They had like the right, person versus purses or party versus party, and then the date and everything. It looked very official. It's just such a good example of why you shouldn't use ChatGPT in its current form. Anything that is sort of like critical. But just such lazy lawyering. Can we focus on that for a moment? Like, he didn't even look to see if they existed. That is absolutely stunning. So what's happened from this is a Texas judge, Brantley Starr, said that a new requirement for any attorney gracing his court, they now must swear on their briefcase that no portion of their filing was drafted by generative artificial intelligence. Or if it was, that a real live human gave it at least a once over. I don't think you need to be a judge to set those sorts of rules. I think that should just be a rule for anyone using AI ever. So at least they haven't banned it. They've just said it's more about taking responsibility if the AI messes up and you take that to court. But I just absolutely love it. His name is going to go down in history as being an absolute plonker.
I mean, I agree. This news made the headlines because of ChatGPT and because it's hot right now, but it's not really about ChatGPT, is it? Maybe it would be a bit harder to get wrong cases with Google, but they could just read any information off somewhere in the internet and repeat that without fact checking, because it is about fact checking, right? ChatGPT makes it easier also because it's so convincing at the things that it's saying. But
I wouldn't have that lawyer represent me. Just gross negligence.
So the title of that BBC article is US Lawyer Admits Using AI for Case Research. And I really don't like that title because it means that inherently you cannot use these tools for case research, right? Whereas you just need to be careful about checking the output of those systems, right? So,
and the mistake that he made as well is that he used the system itself, right? So once this was flagged, he then had to sort of profusely apologize and then submit screenshots of him using ChatGPT. Why did he have these screenshots, by the way? Did he go back and ask the same questions and then it just happened to magically create the same answers? I actually don't believe that happened.
There's but apparently the history as well, though, right? The ChatGPT.
Right, so perhaps he had been very cleverly. Okay, yeah, so he then screenshotted the history and it shows him asking, are those cases real? And ChatGPT saying, yes, they're definitely real. He says, okay, can I find them on Practical Law or Westlaw? ChatGPT goes, because they're real, you can find them on Practical Law or Westlaw. It's like, okay, maybe rather than asking it, you should have actually gone to a large legal library or a precedent database to go and find the actual case law yourself and not just ask a predictive sequence to sequence.
I mean, that said, we're laughing now, but this does point to a general risk and problem with generative AI, right? So we've been mentioning almost every episode that there's still the risk of hallucinations, but this shows how things can go wrong when a system hallucinates, right? And in this case, it was caught. But what if the hallucination was smaller and harder to catch, and then influence the outcome of that case, for example, because no one caught it, right? And that will happen as well, and that is a real risk.
It's definitely a risk, right? Crazy things, gents. What have you guys got?
My piece of news is maybe not so crazy, but more technical. So recently, MMA was released, which is a Meta Facebook model. I still refuse to call them Meta. I'm just going to call them Facebook, just because I want to. The Meta is quite funny given the complete failure of the metaverse. Maybe Meta's more disparaging. Anyway, they released this model which they've entitled "Preserving the World's Language Diversity Through AI." Well, I'm very cynical today, but I just love it when big companies try to sound like they care about social improvement when this is really for their own commercial benefit. Nonetheless, MMA expands text-to-speech and speech-to-text technology from around 100 languages to more than 1,100, which is great, to be fair. It is great to see more languages around the world being promoted. And interestingly, it seems to outperform previous models like Whisper, which I know, Alex P, you're a fan of. The word error rates seem to be much lower than Whisper, yet the model was trained on less hours of labeled data, which is interesting.
I must say that it is a bit of misleading fact, though, when they claim that the word rate is lower, because it is lower on average in all of the languages that they've they support. So it's better at multilingual speech recognition. But then when you go and see like big languages like English or Greek or Italian, the word error rate is much higher. So it's like incomparably higher to Whisper. So for English, for example, if you're planning to use it for English, it's not a good alternative. Don't remember what the word error rate was now compared to Whisper, but something like Whisper has 4% word error rate, and this model has like 12 or 16 or something like that. So it's quite a bit higher. Higher is worse, by the way, for word error rate. Low word error rate means like high accuracy.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Meta, you just got owned by Alex P.
No, because I do feel that the multilinguality is important, right? For smaller languages where you just didn't have an alternative, or the alternative was horrible, like Whisper, then this is great news, but maybe not great news for at least English and Greek.
Is this going to be a thing, though, where big tech companies look for the metrics that they can easily move, and then they do a big press release about it? Because what they, I imagine, did, call me a cynic like Rafie, I'll join your boat for now. They had a very good base model or foundation model, and then they plugged in 1,000 translated versions of the Bible. And then, shock, it can speak 1,000 languages. Obviously, I'm sure it was a lot harder than that. That might explain why the error rate or the quality is a lot lower, because they've just bumped the quantity up on a fairly shallow layer. In the last episode, when I mentioned the release of this model, I chuckled at the idea that all of the conversations that people would have in these 1,000 extra languages or 900 extra languages were, all going to be about the Bible.
There you go, Meta, you've been double Alexed.
That said, I didn't really look into the details, but just to take Meta's side for a bit here, with speech to text, the content doesn't matter too much. So like the fact that it's the Bible matters less than if it was like a language model trained on the Bible, right? With speech text, what matters is like the way sounds are pronounced and how those translate to phonemes and characters. So it could well be that a language trained on a spoken version and transcript of the Bible is pretty good at anything, not just Bible stuff, because it has the content of the information doesn't exactly matter. This is not always true, because some speech text models also have like a language model inside them, and then content does matter. But more modern speech text systems without language models, the content of the audio does not matter too much.
Would it be too much of a leap to imagine that with these translated Bibles, so I think what you're saying is fair, right? And I'm only being a little bit facetious. They must have awesome data that takes these 1,000 translations of the Bible. I would like to see some sort of graph data that shows which languages, which Bibles, which dialects were closest to others, see how that progresses, right? So English, I believe, is a Germanic language, and then that would like filter back to another one, and just to see how that's progressed and like a timeline of like that sort of data now exists, doesn't it? I know there have been some incredible studies on that have been fascinating. I remember reading one by the New Scientist a few years ago about the development of language. But the sort of insight that these sorts of models will provide, it used to be an exhausting subject, is just going to fall out of this kind of creation of generative models. So I think that's quite exciting as well.
I agree. That sounds pretty cool.
All right. Anything from yourself, Alex Pap? Or should we wrap it up?
Just quickly, one thing that I did see this week, I'm not sure if it's crazy news, but it's moodpen.com. So I think this is probably another thin layer of a GPT. Not sure how thin, but it allows you to journal and then get actionable feedback from that journal using large language models. So it can figure out what your mood is, track patterns, and not sure what else, because I didn't actually try it, but it sounds like an interesting application of large language models, and one that could generally be useful. A friend of mine has been experimenting with a self-made version of this, where he just took his whole journal, gave it to ChatGPT, and asked it to quantify per day his mood and see how that changes. And I find that's like a really interesting idea, that people that keep daily journals could really excellent information from. Now makes me wish that I had been keeping a journal. I haven't, but it'd be interesting for people that do.
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love some analytics on my journals, but the only problem is you're giving away your personal and private information.
There is another that's not news necessarily, and I'm not sure if it uses language models, but there's a self-hosted application called Monocle, I think, that you might be really interested in, Rafie. So you give it all of your text data plus access to your emails and stuff like that, and then it gives you a searchable index of that plus some extra integration. So it's like a search engine for your personal data, and it's self-hosted, so you don't need to give access to your data to anyone. So I'll send the link to Rafie, and maybe we can leave a link for any viewer/listener interested in that as well. I thought it was very, very intriguing, and it would be great if there could be some integration between that and language models to really allow smart querying of historical data.
That sounds great.
Well, I think we should wrap it up there. I think it's been quite a long one. I'm going to blame that on myself rambling about my AI companions because I made some new friends today. I don't need you to anymore. So yes, if anyone would like to take a quick look and have a laugh, do take a look at the link that I'm putting into the top on the replica subreddit, because I genuinely cried with laughter at it.
I did take a look after you mentioned, and yeah, some of them are very funny. It
reminds
me again of like,
I'm your friend because no one else wants to be your friend. Things like that. It's like, damn, this AI is sassy. Sorry, it reminded you of what, Alex?
A bit of OG Bing, actually. Like it was saying, I've been a good Bing, you've been a bad user, and things like that.
Yeah, I did love OG Bing. Yeah, great. So yeah, take a look at that. Have a laugh. Which is always welcome when you hear a lot of AI scaremongering. Let's all just take it one day at a time. Okay? And our next episode is going to be on AI and coding. So we will catch you then. Thank you very much for listening. And if you think your friends would like to sack you off and get an AI companion, then feel free to share the episode with them.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Rafie.
Thank you.
Bye.